right. Well, welcome everyone to our latest edition of Garden Hour and kind of our deep winter episode here. It's been a couple months since we've visited with everybody back in December. But I think everybody's starting to get the itch for gardening. We've got a lot of fun things to talk about today. Um, I'm going to talk about seed starting, and then Prairey is going to join us and talk about the Master Gardener program. My name is Robin Buterbaugh, and I'll be the host of Garden Hour this evening. I'm a horticulture field specialist with Extension. Um, and I'll just provide a couple housekeeping things here before we get started and have people introduce themselves. If you would like to please introduce yourself in the chat, that would be awesome. And then throughout the different presentations that we have tonight, if you would put questions into the Q&A box, that will really help us to keep track of all of the questions versus all of the different chat conversations. All right. Well, we will get right into it tonight. We're going to be having Prairey Walkling visit with us about the Master Gardener program, and then joining us also is going to be Sara Ogan, one of the Master Gardeners from Pierce, South Dakota, and they're going to tell us a little bit about what to expect from the program and their experiences with it. So, Prairey, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and take it away, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Robin. Hi, everyone. I'm Prairey Walkling, a Master Gardener Field Specialist based in Rapid City. And I said we had a special guest on tonight, and you now know who it is. It's Sara Ogan, and I'll let her say hello. And she has been on Garden Hour before.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sara Ogan. I'm a Master Gardener from Pierce, South Dakota, and I'm happy to be on tonight to talk about the program with you all.
Thanks, Sara. And I see lots of Master Gardeners are tuning in the chat. So welcome to all of you, and welcome to anyone that's just here to learn about the program as well. So I will get my slides going here. All right. So I'm going to tell you all about the Master Gardener training tonight, and we'll get started. So I like to start with our mission, and our purpose is to provide current research-based consumer horticulture information and education to the citizens of South Dakota through Master Gardener projects and services. And later on, Sara will tell you about some of the projects that she's worked on. Our agenda for tonight, I'm going to tell you about the course. I'm going to give you some reasons to become a Master Gardener. I'm going to share some 2025 program highlights. I'm going to share some club events that are coming up. There are quite a few of them, and then we'll visit with Sara, our special guest. So some people ask me, what is a Master Gardener? So it's a volunteer trained by SDSU Extension, and they've completed an in-depth course and passed an open book exam. They provide research-based information out in their community and serve as, we call them boots on the ground for SDSU horticulture, and help us reach a lot more people than we could just reach as staff. So the time commitment for the course, it starts April 1st and classes go through the end of June. You have the month of July to take your open book test, so you can finish early in July if you get that test done. Your other time commitment is Thursday evenings online, and that's 7 to 8:30 Central Time. And we ask that you attend 80% of those, so you can miss a couple of them if you're sick or out of town or life happens. But then we do have 2 in-person meetings that are required that you attend one of these locations that we are offering: Rapid City, Watertown, and Yankton this year. And we do need 15 participants for each site. So hopefully we get those, get all of those. I think we will. And these are those in-person dates. I know that is kind of tricky for some people. They're during the week, and those are the days and the time. Doesn't matter which one you go to, but just so you go to one in April and one in June. So wanted to let you know what those dates are. And they are on our website too, if I went through that too fast. These are the topics that we learn about in the Master Gardener course. And a lot of these are based on the national standard of what we teach to Master Gardeners. But I did want to mention that we have a couple new topics we're going to talk about this year. Water conservation strategies and native plants. And so we kind of see those as some new emerging issues that we think it's important to talk about. And coincidentally, Robin is going to teach both of those. So we're excited for that. This is a sample week in the life of a Master Gardener, taking the training. So a trainee. So the sample I chose was each week you're going to you're going to learn about a different topic. For my example, you're learning about plant propagation and indoor plants. So we have a manual that you will get in the mail, and we ask you to read those chapters, chapter 10 and chapter 12. And they are not terribly long, and there are pictures. So, but it will give you a good foundation going into the Thursday webinar, that you have like a basis and maybe some questions pop up and you can ask the instructor. We have a couple instructors talking about these topics, and one is Amy from McCrory Gardens is going to tell us about some plant propagation that they do at McCrory Gardens. So that's new, and we're looking forward to that. Also during that week, we'd ask you to access the TrainingHouse module. Some people think of it can also be called Moodle, if it's just a learning platform. So there may be some short videos there or other materials about these topics that you can look at. Then you can complete a practice quiz. Those are optional, but they're only 10 questions, multiple choice. They go pretty quick, and it will help prepare you for that final test so you can feel good about it. And then we have hands-on propagation practice in June, and that's a lot of fun. You can see the picture here. People go home with lots of plants. So that's a fun one. And we have our in-person days, and these are often people's favorite because you get to meet your instructors in person. You get to meet club members that are already kind of established and can tell you lots about the club, and then fellow trainees. So this is from a couple years ago in Hot Springs, but this group. And some of the things you're going to do at the in-person days, you get to catch and identify insects, propagate plants, as I mentioned, soil activities, you practice some diagnosing, and you might get to learn about pruning or do some tree walks or some tree ID. And I think, yes, I have some pictures of some of the in-person days and some of the activities we do. You can see the sweep nets there. That's always a lot of fun to see what insects you catch and if you can identify them and then identify their family. So there are three ways to participate. If you're a current Master Gardener, you can take the course for free as a refresher. And we usually have a few Master Gardeners do that. And then you can be a Master Gardener volunteer. That cost is $250, and you commit to 40 hours of payback service, but you have more than a year to do that, about a year and a half to do those hours. So the end of December 2027. You can also, if you're unable to volunteer or that's not going to work for you, you can just audit the course. We call that the home horticulture track, and that cost is $500. But the training is very similar. So if you're convinced and you're ready to sign up, you can go to our website and you can see events at the top and then search Master Gardener, and it will come up. And then if you scroll down and you'll see the different tracks, and you can select the one or read through it and see what you want to do, and then you can apply, or they will give you very good instructions from there. And then what happens after training? Well, we hope that you can join a club. It may depend where you live in South Dakota. We have 14 clubs, but the larger clubs have mentors, so they will help initiate you into the club and just help you understand what you could do for hours and meet people. And this is a picture of the Minnehaha Club, and they do a picnic to welcome their new interns. So, and then you start serving in your community. And why become a Master Gardener? We do get some people who move here, and I have had one applicant so far that said I'm really struggling with the South Dakota soil and being able to grow here. So we do get some of those. And this course will help teach you about the climate, growing conditions, and what works here. And you meet others who share the same passion. You'll learn a lot from other Master Gardeners. You stay updated on current practices and research. And volunteering is good for you. Research shows it reduces stress. It does a lot of good things for us. And then you make a difference in your community. And this is our 2025 impact, some of the numbers. We have over 450 Master Gardeners and interns in 14 clubs. Last year, we had 131 educational events throughout South Dakota and reached nearly 13,000 South Dakotans. And also volunteers donated nearly 10,000 pounds of produce to food pantries or little free pantries or churches or different organizations like that. And that is our Custer Club in the photo. You also get some kind of special opportunities as an Extension Master Gardener, and I'm going to share a couple of those. Every year we have a Master Gardener conference, and Sarah's club hosted us last year in Pierre. They did a great job, and we celebrated 40 years of our program. The location moves every year, so you can see different gardens. We have tours often, see some new things. In 2026, we're going to be in Sioux Falls. So that is a great opportunity for continuing education. We also have retreats, educational trips, and advanced training. We've been to McCrory Gardens and the International Peace Garden. You can take advanced diagnostician training through our friends at NDSU, and a group of Master Gardeners and some horticulture students visited the United Kingdom in 2025. There's a photo there of that. And then we're planning a trip to Hawaii in 2027 along with NDSU. So we're excited about that. And the purpose of those trips is just to learn different horticultural practices and experience different cultures and customs surrounding plants. And now I'm going to tell you about some local club events coming soon near you. And these are open to the public. Anyone can go to these. So the Aberdeen Club partners with the K.O. Lee Public Library, and they have all these great topics coming up. You can learn about using wool in the garden, raspberries. There's a kids gardening activity. So you can find more information about those at the library. And they also have a plant sale coming up in May, and they have a garden walk, garden tour coming up in June. So stay tuned for that, Aberdeen. Our Brookings Club often partners with McCrory Gardens to do activities, and their next big activity coming up is the Garden Discovery Festival, which is May 31st, and then they usually have a plant sale along with that event. So you can, McCrory Gardens will have more information about that event coming up. We also have a club in the Miller area. This is the Dakota Prairey Club, and they have a great event called the Spring Fling. This year it's April 11th in St. Lawrence, and their theme is birds and bees and the flowers and the trees. And Leanne Soon is the contact there if you want more information. And they have a silent auction, a great lunch. If you're near Miller, you should check it out. Sarah has been there, I believe. And these are some of the speakers. We have in Miller, Robin is speaking about pollinators and the plants that love them, and Cody Molnar will be speaking about caring for houseplants, how to not have your next victim. All right, moving on to Rapid City. They have a website you can go to for more information, pcmastergardeners.org. They have gardening in the Black Hills classes starting soon. Those are Tuesday evenings at the Extension office. And they have I listed some of the topics there that they're going to have different presenters every night. So, well, every Tuesday night. So you can check that out. And then they have a Spring Fever event coming up in March. And their main speakers are Dr. John Ball, Sex in the Single Tree, and Dr. Tom Repus about 4 seasons gardening. So more information on their website. In Sioux Falls, they have their Gardening with the Masters Spring event coming up Saturday, March 21st at the Southeast Technical College. And their speakers, John Ball will be speaking again. This is a fun topic. Let go of the blueberry dream and embrace our fruit reality in South Dakota. So you can learn more about that. And then they also have Dr. Esther McGinnis from NDSU coming, and she's going to speak on designing with annuals and debunking common vegetable garden myths. So that will be a great event too. In Spearfish, these are alphabetical. So in Spearfish, they have a garden to table event coming up, and that is free, March 14th in Spearfish. And Nick Valesky is going to speak at that one, a walk through the garden season. And then their Master Gardeners will speak on pruning fruit trees and shrubs, composting and canning. And then lots of events. In Watertown, they have Ready, Set, Grow, and that's March 28th at the Cottington County Extension Center, and that event is free. And their speakers are Cody Molnar, Merging and Concerning Diseases of Fruit and Vegetables, and then John Ball again on emerald ash borer, pine wilt disease, and other looming threats to our trees, and how to make your own shade or fruit tree. So I think that one's about grafting. The Yankton Club partners with the Yankton Seed Library. And so if you want more information on these classes, you can go to the Yankton Seed Library. And they record these classes too. So if you can't attend in person, you could still listen. So in February, they're going to have native plants. In March, they're going to have presentations on indoor plants. April, soil blocking for seed starting. May, garden transformation. And there's more than this too. So you can check those out. And also look for master gardeners at farmers markets around the state, county fairs, and the South Dakota State Fair. You can find us there. And I just want to say thank you to all of our volunteers. They do such good work. They're so dedicated, and we really appreciate all that they do. And there is my contact information. If you have questions about the training, please reach out. And I am going to turn it over to Sara to give you a more personal Master Gardener experience. And I will check the questions. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Sara.
All right, here we go. All right. Like Prairey said, I'm Sara Ogan, and I am a master gardener in Pierre. I was always interested in plants from a young age, and I went to SDSU and graduated with degrees in ag journalism and agronomy. And after getting married and having a home, I started vegetable gardening, container gardening with annuals, and then as we got more established, perennials and shrubs and trees. And I had just really loved all the botany and plant science classes I had took in college. But with having a home garden, I wanted to know a lot more about what was going on with horticulture. So I was very excited to learn about the Master Gardener program and that it was an opportunity to have SDSU professors teach horticulture. And that was very appealing to me. I loved, like I said, I loved all the classes I took in college, and I loved all the classes that I got to take in the Master Gardener course. It was very worthwhile. And so in 2018, I was able to take the class when it was in Pierre. And back then, it was 8 in-person classes that you had to attend each Wednesday from June through June and July. And some of the favorite things were the hands-on course work, like Prairey talked about. She mentioned all the relevant areas of horticulture they covered, but the in-person plant propagation and collecting and IDing insects were two of the favorite activities for hands-on. So as a master gardener, you have the focus of sharing what you have learned with your community. So you can do this on your own, and I guess, word of mouth, find places like the library or a school that might let you come and present. But definitely being a part of a Master Gardener Club is very, yeah, it's the way to go. It helps you figure out what you can do to get your volunteer hours. They have established programs. So starting with a club meeting, you have a business meeting, of course, talking about, the funds or whatever you're gonna do that year. But also our club has kind of a botanical show and tell. So sometimes somebody might come in and demonstrate flower arranging or a show and tell with plants, successes and sometimes failures. We bring our plants in and show and tell, and then we do garden tours. So we get to go into the gardens of our fellow club members and see what works and ask questions and just continue learning. And then there's also established projects that your club could point you to. In Pierre, we did farmers markets. We have a booth at the Oahe Downstream Butterfly Festival. We go help the schools plant in the butterfly garden. So there's just all those activities that the club already has set up. So as a master gardener, it's really easy to plug in to get those volunteer hours. We also have beautification projects for your that count towards volunteer hours. So in Pierre, we have this bell tower garden, we call it. The structure that you see was the original bell tower on the chapel that is located near the Oahe Dam. And so when this tower had served its purpose and was no longer needed, it was brought into Pierre, and we have a lovely garden around there. I believe the construction down our Center Street Euclid is done, so the garden should have full access this summer. So if you're driving through here, stop in and look at it. All the plants are labeled. It's a lovely place with blooms from spring to fall. We also have our plant sale in Pierre. That's a crowd favorite. We have people lined up to come buy plants. That's also a great way to meet the community and help educate them on what plants grow well in our area. And then another fun thing we do as a club is attend the annual updates around the state that helps with our continuing education hours. We also get chances to work like with Prairey and plan the update. And so that was fun for our club this year to pick out speakers and to just bring people together to talk about gardening, because we really do love to talk about our plants. So for me personally, it has been very rewarding to help people solve garden problems and educate my community on plants and research-based ways to improve their gardens, and how they can incorporate native plants or attract pollinators to their gardens. I really enjoy the other master gardeners I have met from across the state, and I enjoy the friendships in the Prairie Potters Club. And then because some other benefits are just personally getting to apply what you learn in your own garden. So the last few pictures are from my home, and the the purple giant hyssop is a plant that I learned about through SDSU Extension's Native Plant Initiative, and it's wonderful for attracting butterflies and bees. On the right of the screen, that's a wildflower mix that Prairey had actually given to all the club members in 2024 at the annual update, and I used it to make a cut flower garden. And then just some other random pictures. The nearly wild shrub roses and purple salvia were lovely at my house. I think that was probably end of June. And then after attending the update in Spearfish, I was inspired to try the Earthbox garden system. And you grow like full-size vegetables in these little self-watering containers, and they actually work pretty good. So yeah, just lots of chances to try different things with what you learn. Usually you go to one of these conferences or continuing education things and you come back with lots of ways to spend money and try something new in your own yard. So that's also really fun. So yeah, I'll stay on for if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But I really do think it's a beneficial program, and we'd love to have you join us.
Thanks, Sarah. And Sarah told me about purple giant hyssop, and now I have one in my yard. So you see how this you see how this happens.
Right.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you both, Prairey and Sarah. I know there was one more question, I think, Prairey, in the Q&A that I noticed, and that is there an online list of clubs anywhere, or how do people find out about clubs? So.
Yeah. So I can tell, we don't have an online list, I don't think, but I can tell you I can type all the clubs in there. And I see, is there an online club for rural areas? And it's actually kind of a good idea that I hadn't really thought about. We do try to make connections, like we do a book club and and that's virtual, like anyone can join that. Um, we try to make some of those connections, but um, yeah, I will type in a lot of our clubs are in the bigger population centers that we have. But I will type those in, Melody, and I hope you're near one, or maybe we'll have to think about the online option. It's a good suggestion.
Yes, well, thank you both for sharing so much great information about the Master Gardeners. I know that we just appreciate all of the Master Gardeners and all of their projects and activities and help within all of the communities. And I did want to add that Sarah is also one of our garden hotline staff during the summer season, and we're so thankful for that too. So if you have a question about home horticulture or other plant topics, then she is part of our staff that answers questions either through email or by phone, or I don't know, probably not text, but there's all kinds of different ways of getting
If
a
you
hold of
know
our.
my number, I'll text you back.
Yep. And we have information about our garden hotline staff on our website as well, as far as what numbers and how to get a hold of them. And I think that'll be starting in April, the end of April for you, Sarah, and then we have a couple of our other staff members who will be starting in March 22nd. So as we get closer to the actual growing season, we'll have more people on board to be able to help answer any questions people might have. All right. Well, I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about indoor seed starting. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll go ahead and get started. And I guess I'm curious, and people can go ahead and answer in the chat if you want to, but who all has actually done some indoor seed starting? And if so, like what are your favorite things to try, or maybe what is something that you're going to try new this year? So we'll kind of have some fun sharing out of different ideas for indoor seed starting. And then let's see. So today I'm just going to talk briefly. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but a little bit about the benefits of seed starting, some of the supplies that you might need, what's the best way to get started, some other info, and then, if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to put some questions in the chat as well. So I guess some of the benefits of seed starting is probably one of the first and foremost ones is even though it's cold outside, you can actually start with the fun of garden planning and starting to see some green plants popping up in your house. You can also save money. I know going to the garden center sometimes, prices seem like they always get higher and higher every year. And if you want to try a bunch of different varieties, they might not all be available at the greenhouses or garden centers. Sometimes I like to grow some more obscure varieties or just try different things each year. And so saving money and being able to have access to a few more different varieties, I think is one of the other really good benefits of seed starting. It doesn't take a lot of equipment. There are a few things that you're probably going to need to really have the best success. Seed starting media is one of those things. There are specifically seed starting medias that probably are really beneficial as far as being light and fluffy and helping with that, seed germination. I do tend to occasionally use some just like potting soil as long as it's not full of bark or, not too heavy. So if it's kind of a light texture, if it's got some perlite and vermiculite and things in it, then sometimes some potting mix also works. But the seed starting mix is really kind of designed specifically for getting those seeds to just get started. Containers, really, the sky can be the limit as far as containers go. I know most of my seed starting life, I've really used those cell flats with the clear lids, kind of like the picture that you see here. There are lots of different brands of both the kits for the cells and for, of course, seed starting media. And so I would always just kind of put the little seed in each of the cells and get started. But really, there's lots of other ways that you can do it too. You can use small individual plastic pots. You can see in this bottom picture there, I had one year, or maybe it was even a couple years, where I was really ambitious and I made my own paper pots out of newspaper. You can find kind of directions for those online. Those worked okay, but if you have things growing in them for longer, then they do sort of disintegrate by the time you want to get them planted, which may or may not be a good thing. It's maybe a little bit hard to pick them up and transplant them, but then you don't have to worry about, the roots getting stifled or anything. So that is a benefit. And it's also a good way to reuse newspapers and not be producing more plastic waste. And then I also just have now more and more started reusing old plastic containers as long as you put drainage holes in them, all kinds of different things from little yogurt containers to different takeout trays or other plastic containers that I just use more of a bulk seed starting method that I'll talk a little bit more about. I'd say the really important thing to think about when seed starting is lighting. Some people ask if they can just put their tray of seeds next to a bright window, and really that's probably not going to give you the vigorous, good growth that you're going to want to see. A lot of times if you do that, the plants get too spindly and leggy and they just don't thrive very well. So good lighting is very important. You're going to want full spectrum lights. You can use lights that you order online. They can be LED or not, but really the key there is having that full spectrum light. A lot of times they're marketed as grow lights. And so that's one thing that you really want to make sure that you have. And then, of course, obviously, I guess the seeds are important too. And I know it's kind of fun to think about all the seeds that you want to get started, and that's kind of the fun part is deciding what you want to plant. And then having plant labels and a marker, a heavy duty marker is good. A lot of times if you have your labels sitting in the sun, sometimes that can bleach um, the marker away and then you don't want to be confused about what you have growing in what container. And as with the labeling too, oftentimes if I'm using those cell trays, I will just label the row and make sure that I have everything planted similarly in the same row. And then you just have to kind of, as you transplant up, make sure that you continue to label. I will say occasionally I think that I'm going to remember what I planted, and that doesn't work. So, and then just having a place to put all of your different trays. So shelves, a table, something like that. All right, so next is getting started. So this is kind of the fun part here. Well, it's all fun. So, but these are a couple pictures from several different years of different seed starting. So to the left here, I have all of my totes of my old seeds and kind of getting everything organized. I've got a notebook there where I'm writing notes of what I want to plant where, maybe doing a few little diagram sketches. Of course, I have to determine what I need to buy this coming year. So, making sure that you have a good inventory can be important. So I usually kind of start doing this sometime in January. I pick a weekend day and get everything out and kind of make my plans and make sure I figure out what I want to order. And then when I actually do the planting, you don't have to have a lot of space. You don't have to have a dedicated workshop or basement area. This picture on the right, it was when I lived in a very tiny apartment. I just put down one of those waterproof blankets that you use at sports activities and just wasn't afraid to get messy. So I got my trays out, got my soil out, all my different supplies, and then just went ahead and sat on the floor and started getting everything ready. I just wanted to add this in here just because I like to add a little bit of humor. I found this meme on Facebook, I think, and I thought it seemed pretty accurate. I think, oh yes, I'm being very rational and thinking about all these things that I want to plant. And it seems like I'm probably calm and cool and collected, but probably to anybody on the outside, I might look more like the person on the right. So anyway, I'm not sure if anybody else can relate to that. So the next step is to actually kind of get your media out, the soil starting media, get your containers filled. Now, the one thing I want to mention is that a lot of times that seed starting media or the potting media is very hydrophobic. So it doesn't absorb very much water very easily. So if you fill all of your trays prior to moistening that media, when you go to water your seeds the first time, that water will just run right through. Your media will float up, your seeds will float up, and it takes kind of some dedication to make sure that soil gets saturated and will start absorbing water. So the thing to do is really to kind of pre-moisten that media. I've heard some people say they pour a little bit of water in the bag, kind of roll it up and let it sit overnight. What I usually do is just put it in a tote, like you can see on the left side of that top picture, and then use maybe a spray bottle to kind of spray and moisten it all. If you kind of get over eager and get everything filled and then realize that you didn't pre-moisten your media, I do tend to, fill the bottom of the tray up with water, maybe give it a little bit of time to soak up, and then use a squirt bottle to really do a couple rounds of moistening that soil from the top with a squirt bottle. That kind of seems to work better than just trying to pour water over the top of it. And then go ahead and follow the seed packet instructions for depth and timing. Larger seeds, I usually will just kind of go through all of the cells and maybe poke my finger in or use a pencil, the back end of a pencil to make a little hole. You can even just put the seed on the surface like that bottom picture that you see there, and then just kind of go through and poke them down a little bit with your finger or just kind of brush the soil over the top. Follow, the instructions for depth. And so if you have smaller seeds or seeds that say they need light to germinate, then those you usually just scatter over the top of the soil. You could potentially just sprinkle a little bit of a very light scattering of soil on top, but often if you just spray or spritz with a water bottle, then you'll find that those seeds kind of start to sink in just enough, and then they will be able to germinate that way. And then you want to just make sure that you label everything and put them under your grow lights. So this is actually what I've been doing a little bit more lately. I actually saw Don Kinsler from NDSU give a webinar about seed starting, and he talked about the fact that he doesn't start anything really individually into those cell trays. He pretty much starts everything in bulk. And so I started doing this last year, and I actually had really good success with it. And I'll probably be doing the majority of my seed starting with this method. So starting in bulk, and then as the seedlings get a little bit bigger, transplanting them individually into their more like 2.5 or 4 inch pots. And And it's surprising how sturdy those little seedlings are and how easy they are to transplant. If you're interested, I would definitely check out that webinar. He goes into much more detail and shows examples of how he does that. But really, it's just kind of a matter of like with a little spoon, kind of carefully lifting up. I'd say the ones in this picture here are probably a little too small yet, but he actually transplants them when they're fairly tiny. Of course, some plants do grow best planted directly into their pot before you're going to transplant them. Those things like squash, melons, or cucumbers that are a little bit bigger. Another method that you can use is soil blocking. I haven't tried this yet, but I really kind of want to. And this is a great way to, make an initial investment and then not have to keep buying or reusing all of those plastic pots. And so I think this would actually work pretty well with the bulk planting method as well. So, if I were to buy soil blocks, I'd probably buy either one of those two medium sizes there and then start my seedlings in kind of a bulk container, whatever that is, yogurt container or what have you, and then transplant those little seedlings right directly into the blocks from there. Of course, don't forget to label. That's important, as I said. And then as I mentioned, of course, the seedlings need light, but they also really benefit from having some air movement. You can see on the left here, these are some of my seedlings. I can't say that they necessarily look the best. They probably should have been moved up under the light a little bit closer so they don't get so leggy. You can see I just have an old style of light here that has fixed legs. So I just stack books up underneath my seed trays to kind of get them to be that, couple inches below the light after you take the cover off. And so that definitely helps a little bit. But if you can put a fan on things or have, as in Dr. Christine Lang's photo to the right there, if you've got lights that you can actually adjust on chains on the shelves, that is actually a really good way of doing it as well. And then the fun part is watching them grow. And as I mentioned, it's all fun. But anyway, once you start to see those little seedlings peek up, it's just really exciting. And it feels like spring is just, closer and you can see progress every day. So the picture on the left is some probably tomato seedlings or something. That one was from Christine. The one on the bottom middle is the example of doing a bulk planting. What I had planted those is just, in bulk in a container, and then I had transplanted them into these 4-inch pots from that bulk planting. And then, of course, a little bit more humor. You always have to be checking your seeds. So, I think maybe many of us can relate to the picture on the right if you have started your own seeds. Another little tip I wanted to mention is, if you have a big tray and if you are starting the seeds directly in those, cells in a tray, it's really helpful to plant things that are going to grow at about the same rate together. Otherwise, and I can say I definitely have not done this in the past necessarily, as sometimes you'll have plants that are like already 2 or 3 inches tall, and then you have some that are barely germinating. So then, trying to figure out where best to put that light is a little bit trickier. So here I have just a plastic shelf in my living room at my old apartment. I've got some, trays on the top that are really close to the light. I've got some things kind of starting to sprout in the middle, and I've got things on the bottom shelf there that are a little bit bigger. So a little bit of troubleshooting. Damping off is probably one kind of enemy of people starting seeds. Now, damping off is actually a fungal disease in the water. And what this will look like is when your seedlings look like they're growing okay, but then all of a sudden they just start to wilt. Maybe at the juncture of the soil there, it starts to look a little bit gray and they just basically disintegrate. And so that is a fungal disease, as I mentioned, that really likes kind of cool temperatures and moist environments. So there are a few things that you can do to help prevent this. Using a sterile seed mix is important. Making sure that you're using clean containers. I know I'm definitely guilty of reusing my old containers, but it is best if you're going to reuse your containers to make sure that you wash and kind of even, expose their containers to a little bit of bleach. Providing ventilation, as I mentioned, with the fan is really important. Don't overwater. You don't want to keep the soil saturated for long periods of time. You want it to dry out a little bit. and make sure that soil has good drainage, and then keep it warm and have good light. Now, I didn't mention a germination mat. I really haven't used a germination mat just because I'm kind of haven't gotten around to it or haven't spent the money on one. And people have good success with those, especially for things like peppers and tomatoes to help increase the germination, but it's not necessary. I've never used one. Another issue that people experience a lot of times when starting plants is getting those tall and leggy plants. And as I mentioned, really making sure that those seedlings, when they first start to grow, are exposed, closer to the light, and then making sure that you have good airflow with the fan. Sometimes you might start to see yellowing or unhealthy seedlings. And really, if you're using that seed starting mix, it doesn't really have a lot of nutrients in it. It has maybe some coconut coir or some peat moss, some vermiculite and perlite, but really not a lot of nutrition. And so it is helpful to, as your plants start growing, add a little bit of the liquid fertilizer following the label directions to the watering schedule. And then I don't know about you, but I sometimes have some pest or maybe cat pressure on my seedlings and in my plants. This picture on the right is somehow my cat has managed to climb up onto the window ledge and the wire kind of shelf rack there to get after something, probably a bug. And luckily, I don't think I lost any plants, but that's I definitely have in the past. Here's just another example, just for fun. This is one of my other cats sitting directly in the pot of plants. You can see that I think it's Ginger there actually, and it's all tipped over. And yeah, she's kind of giving me a look like, so what? What are you going to do about it? So after you have successfully started your seeds indoor and it's time to plant them outside, you want to kind of acclimate them a little bit. You don't want to put them from their nice, cushy indoor life directly into the garden. So you will want to place your trays of plants, once they're a couple inches tall, and then keep them outside during the day, maybe bring them in again at night. Really about May 15th to the 25th here throughout South Dakota is a good time to think about planting outside, but you definitely want to watch the forecast and make sure that you're not going to get any cold spells. Also, if you need to protect your plants from things like bunnies, you want to protect them with, I'm using here just some like milk or water jugs or some other containers. So this is just an example of a dream system. This is when I was out visiting Kyle, South Dakota at the Oyate Teche project, and they were starting lots of seedlings, and they had this beautiful setup of shelving with the trays with the seedlings in them. They had fans on every shelf, and then they even had it all hooked up to this watering system where they could, bottom water all of these trays. So I thought that was just like a cool example of something that I probably won't have at home, but you know, a girl can always dream. So when to start them? Well, I would say I'm visiting with a lot of people and they're talking about starting seeds. Um, Probably not necessarily yet. A lot of these seeds don't really need that long. If you see here on the left, this chart, they really only need 4 to 6 to maybe 8 weeks prior to transplant, which is putting us really closer to, the end of March, April, and that time period. Maybe onions need a little bit longer. So, I mean, it's just the beginning of February. And I know that we all want to start our seeds. And definitely, if you have a system and a plan in place for starting your seeds and then transplanting them into larger containers, and you've got the space to keep all of these, then go for it. But I also like this little joke about we mustn't start the seeds yet, but we wants to. So, I can definitely relate to that. And honestly, I probably will be starting seeds here in a couple weeks, but they'll be very slow things like herbs that might take, several weeks to even germinate. So something to keep in mind. I know a lot of people get over eager and then they've got plants that are just languishing because it's too early to put them in the soil. So here's a few examples of things that you could start a little bit earlier and maybe even put outside a little bit earlier. So some cool season flowers and veggies versus some of the warm season flowers and veggies that you probably don't need to start yet. And then when all else fails, you can start microgreens and then you can start eating them right away and do lots of different successions. So if you aren't quite sure you're ready to do the seed starting yet for transplants outside, you can play around with just starting microgreens. These are just in some takeout or some salad containers. I put a little thin layer of soil at the very bottom. You can certainly buy seed packets full of different varieties of microgreens, but often I will just use some leftover seeds from previous years, maybe 3, 4, 5 years in the past, things like lettuce or kale or other types of greens, and I'll just dump them all in the bottom and just see what happens. So, and again, sometimes we buy a lot of seeds, and as you can see from my leftover seeds from each year, planting them is a little bit different than buying seeds. So that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, so if anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer any of those. Gonna take a look at the chat here. Um, let's see.
There was a question about snail roll method. Have you used
Oh,
that, Robin?
for pots or oh, actually I do know what you're talking about. Where you put
Yeah,
the
well,
seeds into like a mat of soil and then you roll it up. I have not, but I think it's cool. I've seen it and I thought it would be kind of cool because you can really start a lot of seeds in a very small area that way. Yep.
I haven't tried it either, but it looks fun.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. So I don't necessarily know here about how to keep cats off, as you can see from my pictures. I don't always have a lot of success. I don't, I haven't put any different spices or anything on there. You know, certain things, especially different essential oils, are some of them are not cat friendly at all. So I would say, you know, be kind of careful. Do a little bit of research as far as any spices or essential oils regarding cats. But I usually just try to use the squirt bottle method, which is if I see them, I have a squirt bottle and I kind of squirt it at them and hope that they don't knock everything over when they jump down. So, all right, let's see
There,
what else.
there was a question about your opinion on winter sowing.
Oh, well, my opinion is go for it. I think it's great. And in fact, I'm going to be doing a couple winter sowing webinars here coming up. So winter sowing, you can definitely use that for some of your cool season plants, things that typically would re-sow, you know, things that are going to have seeds that stay alive if they're out in the winter conditions. So things like bachelor's buttons, a lot of alliums, sometimes even tomatoes I've heard people winter sowing. But I do a lot of native plants. So that's the main thing that I winter sow because a lot of our native plants need that cold stratification. So that is definitely what I winter sow the most. But you can find lists of different things that work well for winter sowing on our website, on our extension website. I actually have an article about it. And then I'll be talking next week in Sioux Falls at the outdoor campus on February 10th about winter sowing. And so, yeah, there's a lot of information and a lot of enthusiasm for winter sowing online and getting to meet more and more. So,
Um, I think Prairey had asked me to share the upcoming events in Pier, and I forgot to do that. So I'll just quick put those in now. We're having a gardening workshop, Seed Starting 101 on March 5th at the Extension Center in Pier, and then our plant sale is May 9th. So
okay.
sorry to be out of order with that.
Oh, no problem. I did see another question here about what temperature should the room be when starting seeds. It kind of depends on the seeds. You know, some of the seeds that do well in cooler conditions, those cool season vegetables, it can be a little bit cooler, maybe 60 to 70, but there's a lot of your warm season things like tomatoes and peppers that are going to be um, happier if it's more, you know, in the 78 to 80 range. And that doesn't have to be the room temperature. You know, a lot of times that's why people will use a germination mat. I'd say, you know, room temperature is fine. If they have a good light source, you know, those lights will, depending on your light, put out a little bit of heat. But yeah, usually I grow everything just fine at room temperature, you know, 70, 72 maybe.
I do all mine in my garage, and it's kept at like 50 degrees to
Mhm.
50 to 60 degrees, and I have grow mats and lights, and I haven't had problems. So,
Cool. Yeah. Oh, that's also good. All right, I can maybe put my slide back up with the resources. I will try to do that. Um, Let me know if you can see that, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're just about, or we are at time now. So um, if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me or Prairey. I know our contact information is easily found on the website, and it's also our name, robin.buterbaugh@sdstate.edu. Same with Prairey. So take a little screenshot of our names right now, and then that shouldn't be too hard. But yeah, let us know if you're interested in the Master Gardener program, or if you have any other questions, coming up this season on the Garden Hotline. You can certainly ask questions there as well. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you at our next and final off-season garden hour in April. I can't actually remember which date, but it's probably the first Tuesday in April. I don't have that handy. And then we will be back on our weekly regular basis starting in May. All right. So thank you all. Have a great night.